What I was actually hoping to talk about was kind of the future. My wife Abby back there actually suggested that. She says, people don't want, what are you going to talk about yourself? It's boring. And she's not wrong. So I thought I'd talk about the future. The future for sound is really especially exciting. We have these new immersive sound formats. I don't know if you guys are familiar with them. Right now there's two competing formats. I think we'll end up with one. The two formats, the first one is Dolby Atmos. Second is Oro, which is marketed through Barco, which is the digital projector company. And it was actually developed by a guy in Belgium. It's the weakest system, but the Dolby Atmos system is awesome. And I don't know if you guys have heard it. Tom back there has had quite a bit of experience mixing in it. I'm, in terms of music, I'm just put that system into my own facility, and I'm very proud to say I'll be doing the very first native Dolby Atmos music mix ever done. I'm very, very proud of that. It's a movie called Peabody and Sherman. Interestingly, it's an obviously animated feature for DreamWorks Animation. The really fascinating thing about it is DreamWorks Animation actually is the only major entity that is actually committed to Oro. And but what makes it interesting, and politics and these sort of things, DreamWorks Animation just recently made a distribution deal with Fox. Fox is committed to Atmos, and so guess what? The primary mix is going to be native Atmos. So that presented a great opportunity to do this, and it's we're all just very excited and thrilled. It's really fun to be in the sort of front end of this world, and it's really what the future is. So all you guys will be, if you're working features or even television, my feeling is, what would I say, 5 years, maybe a little bit longer, but down the line, there's no question that this format will exist for the home market as well. But it's a fantastic, it's truly a three-dimensional sound environment. You have, in addition to the screen channels, you have surrounds. You also have ceiling channels. Is everybody familiar with it? Or? Yeah. Okay. Oh, great. Okay. Have you all heard it?
Yes.
Cool, right?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah. It's really awesome, and it's just fun to screw around with it. I got to be honest with you. But for it's like anything. We're all sort of figuring out how to use it. I equate it to, look. I'm an old guy, and I've been around a long time. And I remember when stereo, believe it or not, was first available. I was a kid, and I think I've told the story to Tom. I know my wife has heard it probably way too many times, but I'll tell you guys anyway. When I was a kid, I built a stereo with a friend of mine. It took us an entire summer. We actually had to buy this receiver at an electronics parts store. There was no such thing as even a stereo store where you could buy this thing. So we spent the summer putting this thing together. We almost electrocuted ourselves several times, but we finally built it, and it actually worked. Problem was, there's nothing to play on it. We found there was some demonstration records. So we played some demonstration records, and what were they? You heard like a ping pong ball go from one side to the other, and that was it. Then they started to put out a little bit of music in stereo, but it was weird. They'd have like let's say a jazz trio. You'd have drums on one side, you'd have bass on the other side, and the piano in the middle, and it just sounded weird. It just, they sort of disassembled the band. The music was, it was, and it took, finally somebody said, well, wait a minute. What if I record the drums in stereo and I have the bass in the middle? Now, wow, that sounds kind of cool, and the piano in stereo. Oh, yeah. That's, so it took a while to figure out how do we even use this technology. It's cool technology, but at first you have to do stupid things until you figure out the cool things to do with it. And I think Atmos is probably in that same world right now. So for me personally, I'm being a little conservative with it. I'm always checking how's the 7.1 sound, how's the 5.1 sound. Another great aspect of Atmos is you can just easily switch between those formats, so you can validate what the mix is. So, where 90% of the world, 95%, 99% of the world will hear it in 5.1, let's say, at least you can check to make sure it's going to all fold down well. The Atmos, the system is actually a combination of hardware and software. There's this gigantic box called an RMU, render, and it's just filled with electronics. And this is Dolby's, it's their proprietary box, their hardware. I don't know what the heck it does. It's just Matty in, Matty out. That's all I know, okay? But inside of it, is the, and by the way, in conjunction with that, there's several pieces of software that basically talk to it. But in the context of that, it has the algorithms that allow it to essentially, fold down the Atmos mixes to 7.1 and 5.1. And in fact, it will output those formats, and you can record them if you want. So if you're, let's say you're dubbing, you're on a dub stage, you do an Atmos master. Now you have to deliver 7.1 and or 5.1. You can listen to it, if you need to make any little tweaks or whatever, you can do that, and then print that as well. So it's pretty slick. I mean, it's still really new. It's still evolving, but it's a really, really great format. It's a great device. It's one, there's a list of reasons why, and I did a ton of research into this system before I committed to it. It was a big investment, not just in terms of a financial investment, but in terms of, do I really want to do this? Is this something that's meaningful, or is this, I think personally, I'm not a huge fan of 3D. I think there's too many movies in 3D. I think that's really more of a business deal. Personal opinion. There are some movies that they release in 3D that I think it actually hurts them. Yeah. So you agree too. But this is different. We're equipped to hear it. You don't need to wear anything. What I've experimented with, which actually has been pretty successful for me, is with choir. I'll elevate choir up, but not up to the ceiling. I'll take choir up 25 to 50%. So choir sort of hovers over you. It's way cool.
Yeah, that's great.
But I still keep, for the most part, most of the music kind of down where the audience is. But I like surrounding them. I'll bring, but I do it selectively so that, and this is the beauty of mixing native, is I can selectively, I can take certain mics, let's say part of my tree traditionally when I record orchestra, I use a Decatree. You guys familiar with what that is? Okay. And then I also record some wide room mics. So they sort of, it helps add width to the orchestra. So I'll take the wide mics and really put them against the wall. And I'll probably bring them out into the room as well. And then I'm experimenting now a little bit with what to do with the tree mics. So I'll have some onto the wall, or maybe the wall and the screen channels as well. I'll take the center mic and I've got it in the center of the screen. I keep that guy at the screen so that I don't ever want to lose the power of the screen channels. So I'm experimenting with this. Like I said, it's new. So I'm learning how to do this. But it's really effective. And what I'm able to do is place the various channels in such a way that you really get a sense of the depth of the orchestra, but it's still in front of you, it's still attached to the movie, but you're really feeling the orchestra, if you will. And I can do the same thing with band. I do stuff with electronic elements, prelay things. So I'm really getting into some placement, but I don't want to detach from the screen. So, you've got to be a little conservative with that. But it's really powerful. You can do a lot of things with effects, with reverbs, how you spread it around, delays, all kinds of stuff. It's fun to do. However, it's not fast. And that's a different issue because, we get into the business aspect. So, the meter's running and how that goes. And so it's a combination, it's all these things you're trying to, so I try to think ahead as much as I possibly can. So I have ideas in my mind of what I want to try in terms of mixing ahead of time. So I'll know as soon as I hit the, as soon as I start, I've already got some ideas of what I want to do, and I just start creating those things and placing that and doing these things ahead of time instead of thinking while we're going, gee, what should I do with this sound, or what, So, it's always a bit of a juggling act between the creative aspect and the business aspect, because I truly respect, the studio position, the business part of it. I've learned that you can't ever disrespect the business, or you're gone. At the end of the day, you will always hear the dialogue, because the dialogue's the story. You're always going to hear it. And if music is ever stepping on any of that, it's gone. So even in the recording process, if I hear something that might be a wonderful, great brass line, fantastic. Yeah, but there's the dialogue, and you know what really sucks? They're whispering. I can't tell you how many times, So what do? So I'll say, look, this might be a problem. So we can do what's the cool way around that? You do an alternate. So we'll do a pickup, take the brass down or out or whatever, and hand it off to the re-recording people. But at least it's a way to that would be my suggestion. Let's do an alternate. So the composer keeps the context, at least an option of the context of what he or she created, and at the same time we can take care of the film. So worst case scenario, at least that one will go on the CD. The Atmos data, what Atmos really is panning. That's really what it's about. And the other than that, it's traditional. It's every other session I've done, every other project I've done forever on Pro Tools. It's essentially identical. The difference is the panning, and the panner talks to the renderer, the RMU, and tells it where to place it. Now, there's also a great deal of difference technically in the monitor alignment, and it's brilliant. First of all, so you guys are gratefully are technical, so this will mean something to you. The traditional film alignment was the screen channels were at 85 dB, surrounds were at 82, so that when the left and right was combined, it was 85. And the subwoofer essentially is 91. There's some other specific way that the technicians have of aligning, but it's essentially around 91. Well, Atmos is different now. The surrounds are all at 85 as well. Each surround monitor is 85. So all of them are the same level. Additionally, they're full range. Additionally, they're bass managed. So there's subwoofer data that is through the processor, through the Atmos processor, it talks to the surround subwoofer to bass manage whatever material is going to the surrounds. So it's a new thing. So you now have surrounds that essentially sound equivalent to screen channels. That's really a big deal. That's a good and bad thing. Because the temptation is obvious. Gee, I can put anything anywhere. And I can hear it all. That's great and all that. But you really got to be careful. And I've discovered just, with musical elements, percussive elements, for example, you got to really watch out. It's tempting. Oh, yeah, I can put something here. And do I really need to put something here? Where does it become no longer musical and just stupid? And I don't say, I mean that seriously. It is, just because you can, and doesn't mean you should. So, it's interesting. You really have to use less processing because things are more audible. The surrounds are actually, instead of just being the sort of ambient thing that was in the theater, it's actually real sound now. Mm-hmm. So you can use this whole environment in a meaningful way. But so what does that mean? If I have, which I have always done, is recorded surround channels for an orchestra, you can actually hear them. It actually has an impact. You have this sense. It adds this sense of depth. It's actually meaningful. What I've been doing with surrounds is I will take my surround channels and I'll elevate them. It's another thing I like to elevate. So the specific surround channels that I record, I'll have them in the back, not against the wall in the back. I'll even bring those in a little bit, but I like to elevate them 25 to, again, 50% up. So, and what the having the full range allows me to do is I can widen the orchestra. And as I said, I bring it out into the room a little bit. But I add width. What does that allow? That creates actually all this added space for dialogue and effects. It's actually an enhancement. I can get away from the dialogue. There's more space for the dialogue. Right. I actually think Atmos is made for music, to tell you the truth. I really do. I mean, I think it's just, and I really believe that. It's made for it. It's this, dialogue has the screen, right? Music has everything else. And fair enough. And of course, sound effects. The great thing, sound effects, ambiances. Okay, forever. We could, music is competing with ambiances. What do I mean by that? Let's say a composer has written this beautiful lyrical piece, very light strings, and you have an outdoor ambience. The cue's dead. Whether you put it in or don't put it in is the same, because you don't hear it. Well, now you have a way to still make that live. Because I can bring it to the sides. I can, the ambience can maybe elevate a little bit. And, I'm sure Tom can speak to this as well, so you have this whole other dimension, which never existed before. We had the left, right, we had the front, back. Now we have the top, bottom. So you truly have a three-dimensional space now. One of the great things about the Atmos, they try very hard, and what they do is they actually measure every single room. The parameters of every room are programmed into the renderer, or in the case of let's say a theater, the CP850 is their Dolby's box that essentially is the playback unit that's analogous to the renderer that's at every dub stage. So every room has that data of whatever that room is programmed into the unit. And so what happens is that each renderer is able to interpret the Atmos pan data for that room. The idea is that if I position a sound, let's say, wherever it is, I position it 45% off of the screen and 20% in from the right wall. The Atmos system doesn't care where the monitors are, per se. It knows what the percentages are. That's what it looks at. In fact, if you look at the graphic interface of the panner itself, the only thing it's indicated is percentages. There's also a graphic little dot that shows you where this sound more or less is in relation to the room. But it's really looking and recording percentages. And that's what it's interpreting. So at every room it's playing back the percentage relative to that room. And the way it does it is because it has the parameters of that room programmed into their room. It's customized for each room. My best recommendation is for your composers to get the best possible libraries they can. Libraries are getting better and better. I've actually worked on several myself. I work with the Cinesamples guys, and Thanksgiving actually going to release. We did a string library, and we did a brass library. They're good. Are they going to replace an orchestra? No, they're not. It's dependent, by the way, on one other aspect: the programmer. That's a big part of it. You could have the best library in the world. I've heard them sound really bad. If somebody, you just put up the sound, you don't pay any attention, they go. They don't sound all that great. If it's somebody who really knows how to deal with that, how to program them, how to tweak the sounds, what to do, they can sound pretty amazing. Same library. It's like anything else, really. Microphones and whatever else. They can sound great, they can sound lousy. Just, it's more about the artist who's dealing with them. And that's really, that's going to help you a lot. And I guess it's the good news and bad news for you. It's probably going to be on you to learn how to deal with the libraries. Because, you know, there's some really good ones around now, some very good ones. And we were just in Vienna working with we're actually met all the guys who did the Vienna string. You know, those guys are really great guys, and they have those. That's a fantastic. You know, their products are great. But same deal. You know, I've heard them sound fantastic, and I've heard them sound lousy. And when I get them, I deal with synths a lot. But when I get them, I can't do anything. It's just, to me, when I get it, it's audio. I get wave files. That's it. And it is what it is, you know. Yeah. So for you, the best thing you've got is because you can get into you can still get into their, to their sequencers. You can get into Logic and help it along. For me, I always, if I use synths with real players, now we're talking about orchestral synths, okay? String samples. You never, ever, ever want to hear the sample. If you ever hear a sample, it's too loud. Now, there's ways to put them, so you want to get them in a place where it's helping. And then you, of course, even before that, you have to decide, why do I even want it? What do I need it for? Sometimes you want to help articulation. So if you have a real rhythmic, fast-paced, marcato string part, and you either didn't have enough real players to really sell it, or they didn't play it great, and you want to help that articulation of that rhythm. Synths are great for that. Until it sounds like synths. Then it's not so good. So it's always a balance. There is no specific percentage. There's no, the only thing I would ever tell you is, if it starts sounding like synths to you, they're too loud. So that's that's specific to orchestral synthesized elements that you're mixing in with live players. Mixing synths with orchestra, for example, and I'm talking about other kinds of synths, that takes a while to learn how to do, because it's really tricky to get the balance between electronic elements and acoustical elements to want to live together, because they really don't. They just don't play well together. And to get them to work well and not overwhelm each other. So for example, if the orchestra's too loud in relation to the electronics sound wimpy. On the other hand, if you can have 3 synth elements, if they're too loud, a 100-piece orchestra sounds like there's 12 players. So, getting that balance, it's always a battle. It's just part of the art form to figure out how do I get, and it changes with each project. Each score is different. Let's talk about orchestra. Okay, 0 EQ. I have learned, I have a large, don't tell my wife, I have a large microphone collection. I know. I know.
Do you hide them in the trunk and then tell her you've had this old one for a while?
I have about 8 big flight cases full of microphones. I have over 100 of my own microphones. Including, if you know, I own 4 original M50s, which is, you know, they're the great, you know, really fantastic microphones for recording orchestra. You know, just they were about 600 made, and they think probably there's only about 400 left in the world. I have 1% of them. But fantastic microphones. So and other, you know, I've been collecting them for a long time, and I actually use them all, believe it or not, at one time or another. But my philosophy has always been, look, get the right microphones, the right preamps, put them in the right place. You don't need to EQ anything. Right. Every time I've tried EQing something in that world, I've fixed one thing and made something else worse. And it's been frustrating for me. It's never been good. It's just never worked out well. So I've learned, okay, that's not a good approach. Let me find the right place for the microphones. Oh, that works out good. So I have on any of my scores, no EQ that I record. And in fact, I really do everything to not EQ orchestra. Recordings that come out of London, for example, are always wonderful. You know, you know, even if, you know, that, you know, I'll get to, I'm mixing, but I didn't record it usually. You know, I know the guys over there, and they're really very good. And so I don't really EQ. On the other hand, for electronic elements, for rhythm section, pop stuff, it's all about EQ and compression and, you know, whatever else. That's a sound. That's different. That's part of the sound. There's no microphone you're going to place on a snare drum and get a pop sounding drum. It just isn't, you know, so you have to EQ that. Young people are so accustomed to working on a keyboard and with samples. So they think the way to make music, oh, well, let's see, I press that key and that's the Marcato first violins. So we'll just record the Marcato first violins. Okay, we'll do a pass of that. And then we'll do the long first violins. Do a pass of that. Now we'll do you know, and you're doing endless passes of, and at some point you just want to hang yourself. It's horrible, and it's not music, and it's not a way to make music. If a composer has a vision about, look, this is, you know, I want to use an orchestra, but I want it to sound like a pop song, then that's how you approach it. It's really helpful if the composer has a vision, you know, has an idea of, and the worst possible place to be is if they don't. Yeah, I don't like that. Well, what would you like? I don't know. I don't want that. Yeah. Well, you know.
People always know what they don't want.
Yeah, you know, that's a horrible, and by the way, it's hard for the composer if a director's that way. Okay, you're familiar with that, are you? Okay, yes. The truth is that those people that have those sounds, it's inherent in the writing. It's really, the music's composed that way. It's not, you know, I mean, Danny's just ridiculously talented, and it's hard to create a sound. It's really hard, and you guys can probably count on one hand the number of people that you say, okay, these have a distinctive sound. You know, John Williams probably, in terms of orchestra, has a sound. Tom Newman has a sound. Danny, certainly. Hans Zimmer has a sound. That's hard to do, very hard to do. And there's not an abundance of people that can do that. As a mixer, I mean, I've worked with Danny, I've worked with Tom, and I actually feel I enjoy it. I'm part of it. It's really fun. And and again, these are people that have real vision. So for me, it's actually much easier. I know what they're going for. I know what the sound is, or should be anyway. And Danny's very cool. We collaborate. I'm very involved in every aspect of creating the final product, and he's a real hands-on kind of guy. He loves to get in and mix, and so I prep out all the mixes and get everything ready, and he'll come in and he'll do a few little tweaks, and we'll listen. And I say, hey, that's a little too loud, don't you think? Yeah, okay, and bring it down a little bit, and it's that kind of thing. But for the most part, I get everything ready to go, and I know what he's going for. He said I get the demos ahead of time, so I know what to expect. If it's stuff I'm recording, I'll get scores ahead of time and check those out, and then I do a lot of homework, so I'm prepared with any project really. But and that's an important thing too, is to be very, very prepared. I've talked to the composer. If there's anything special, is there a sound you're looking for? Is there anything? Are there solos you're going to have? Whatever. If I'm recording a score, should we isolate anything? Well, sometimes harp. I'm not even sure. The director hates harp, but I kind of like it, and I've got it. So, but let's isolate the harp. Okay, so I know I've put the harp in a booth, but still has to sound like it's part of the orchestra. So I know that's a challenge I've got to do. So now the harp's going to be in a little room, but it's got to sound like it's in a big room. So that's part of the thing. Also, I know when I mix it, harp's got to be separate because the director hates harp. So I can say, don't worry about the harp, it'll be separate and you'll have total control. And what happens is the harp will go in and the director won't say anything. It's just, the director knows that he or she will have total control over it. And that's what really matters. You guys know any directors at all? Before I even start a project, I will have already spoken, as I said, to the composer maybe several times, possibly orchestrator. I've checked to see if there's any electronic elements, what they are, how many there are, how extensive it is. I'll make sure that they're set up a certain way. If let's say we're recording first, that I want them set up in a certain way so that I'm able to hear them on the stage, have control over it, and I don't want to have to mix anything. So I want it sort of pre-mixed, just in a rough manner, so they sound decent. They're, I can get an idea of what it is. I can have simple control over it, but I don't have to mess with them because I have enough other stuff to do. I will have talked to the stage. I will have sent them a drawing of the setup that I want, the mic list. Will have talked to my cartage company to make sure all my gear shows up. I'll tell them what preamps I want, what microphones go into the preamps, how I want the console laid, all these details. So I will get oftentimes spotting notes, certainly cue list. So I see how many cues we have, how much total music. Because I get a phone call. How long do you think this is going to take you to mix? How much is it going to cost? A lot of times I do packages. So you know what that is.
Dangerous.
So exactly. So now
That is.
if I'm doing a package, they say, okay, we want you to let's say record, mix, want to be at your studio. You have to supply the Pro Tools operator and blah, 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 all these other things, right? So now I have to come up with a price that I have to live with, okay? So what am I now? I'm now an uncompensated producer of the movie. Seriously, that's what I am. Because now I take on, by saying yes, I take on the risk of all these functions that I now agree to, right? So however many days, whatever. So I've got to go back on all my experience and whatever and figure this out and say yes and find a way to say yes. Because as I say, I am in the yes business. And that's what I do. I have to find a way to say yes. Here's how I look at all that stuff. I say if it's something that's not egregious, if it's going to add another day, it's not a big deal. I'll probably just eat it. Especially if it's a client. It's Danny. It's a package with Danny. He's tremendously loyal to me. I want to find a way to make him comfortable, to make him happy, and to make his clients happy. I'm probably not going to, if it's massively different, if it doubles the time, then we have a conversation. But most people are pretty cool about that. They really are. That's what I found. People are, they're really business people, and they understand, and nobody's trying to screw anybody. And so most of the people I've ever run into, ever done business with, have always been pretty darn fair. And so they know if they really make significant changes last minute that nobody anticipated, that were never discussed or mentioned, it's kind of not on me to accept responsibility for that. Most people are very, very cool about that. That's been my experience. I've honestly, and the truth is that rarely ever happens. By the time you get to where I'm, by the time I'm on board a project, they really don't have a lot of latitude to make a huge amount of changes. They can say, we hate the score, we want somebody else. But that's really, again, that has nothing to do with me. And if I've already done work, look, kids, you got to pay me. And they do. It happens, but even that doesn't happen all that often. So my experience is, I don't really worry about that, honestly.
But you are hiring musicians, though.
No. I don't ever get into that.
Oh, well, that's what I'm talking about.
Oh, no. Oh, I'm sorry.
That's what I'm talking
I never get into that. That I never. Never. Yeah. If it's my studio, and I have a guy who runs Pro Tools stuff for me. We're running 3 systems, and he does the record. I've worked with him for many years, and it's 2 of us really, and so it's him and my studio and my equipment and that and me, and so that I'm comfortable with that.
Yeah,
I never get into hiring musicians. Frankly, I was really lucky. I was at the right place at the right time. When I started out doing records, and I did a lot of jazz records. And early on in my career, I actually had a partner, and we had a client Sid and Marty Crawford they did some television shows. So we started doing television shows. We did Donnie Marie show, the Osmonds, and you guys probably don't even know who that is, but we did. So we got into doing television, and we got very, very busy. This is way, way, way back in the day when every bit of music that if anybody wanted any music for anything at all, they actually had to record it. There was no synths, none of that stuff. It was all, you had to record it. So we had this brilliant idea. Things were going really well for us, so we thought, well, we try to get in some studios, and it would be difficult for us sometimes because studios were very busy. Well, why don't we build our own studio? Things are going so well, we decided, had this great idea, build our own studio. Anyway, so we did, and we got into the first contemporary studio in Los Angeles. We decided to get into doing television and film work, and all film studios at that time. Now we opened in 1977, and all the film studios at that time were pretty antiquated. They basically were all mono stages, ran mag. Typically, the most they could do was 3-track mag. And they had no multi-track machines. They had no modern technology. They are older consoles. It was pretty antiquated. We opened up, we had this Trident A-series English console and 24-track Studer tape machine and, contemporary gear, and we were like the new kids on the block. And almost instantly, we were incredibly busy doing television shows, episodic TV. I was saying, sometimes I do 3 episodes of a day. It was just unbelievable. I was beyond exhausted. I was practically. We had just been married. We hardly saw each other. I lived at the studio. I had a terrible attitude and everything. It was really, but I would, and eventually got into doing film work. And the first show, one of the first movies I did was On Golden Pond.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, it was. It was Dave Grusin wrote, the score was ridiculous. One of the really great movie scores, really is. It was, by the way, in mono, I might add. Right at that time, what was called Dolby Stereo, which was a matrixed this weird left, center, right, mono surround stereo thing that was never really stereo, came about. And it was just starting at that. So this is how far back it is. Now we don't even, now we're, like I said, now we're started out talking about Atmos. Most movies were still mono then. Yep. They just started releasing in this new stereo format. So, but that's sort of how I got into doing film score, was through that. And then I had the great fortune of, as I said, because I was doing television, working on this show called Chips. And I met Alan Silvestri. He was the composer on Chips. And here's this young guy comes bouncing in the studio one day. It's the first session, and we really hit it off.
He's a great guy.
And he's a fantastic. He's been a good friend forever, and a pretty good composer. And so we really hit it off. But I'll tell you a quick story about him. So we do, 2-3 seasons of this really stupid show, and he gets fired. Last season, he gets fired. They hire a new producer, and the producer has to bring his own people in, so they fire Alan. So Alan's out of work. And he's out of work for a long time, 6 months, something like that, 6, 8 months. He finally gets a call to do an episode of T.J. Hooker, one of those shows. So it was, I forget what studio it was, but he goes to the studio, and he's out there, and he really needs this job. He hasn't worked in a long time. And Alan conducts, so he's out on the podium. Now, the thing about being out on the podium is you don't have a clue what's going on in the control room. Well, the mixer, and here it is, Alan's writing, it's orchestra and rhythm section. Well, the mixer gets the orchestra kind of okay, but he gets none of the rhythm section in the mix. Nothing. So as you might imagine, the music really sounds pretty stupid.
A little flat.
So the guy from the TV show looks at the head of music for the studio, it was Lorimar, said, "Who is this guy? This guy sucks." Thinking that he's just writing this music, which essentially was just sweetener really for the rhythm section, which was really the guts of the music. So he says, "Get rid of this guy." So literally the head of music goes out to the podium and fires Alan.
Oh, God.
Harsh, but great thing for me is that Alan's going, what could be? He says there's something, and he realizes what happened. But what he also realizes is the mixer matters. Yeah. So we never had that problem. So he finally, this is in his mind now. He says, okay, if I ever get a shot at doing anything, I'm calling Dennis. Well, a few more months go by, and he goes to the movies with his wife, and they're watching a movie called Blue Thunder. I don't know if you guys ever remember that. Coincidentally and ironically, I worked on that movie. So what it wasn't a great movie either, but the score was pretty innovative. It was one of the first sort of synthesized film scores, synthesizer and music and orchestra, and it was pretty cool. And Alan's listening, he says, I can do that. So he literally goes home and learns about this stuff and buys some synthesizers and learns how to program them. This is early days of synthesizers. Yeah. I mean, now it's things you don't even, it's logic and it's all, forget that. That was like, so one day he gets a call from a music editor friend of his. And he says, listen, I'm working on this movie. The director has fired 2 composers. And he's looking for somebody. And he tells him briefly a little bit about the movie. And he says, listen, if you write something, he says, give me a cassette, and I'll play it. I'll play it for the director. So this is like 9 o'clock in the morning. At 4 o'clock in the afternoon, he had finished it. He calls a messenger. He's got the cassette, takes it to the director. Movie, Romance in the Stone.
Ooh-yah.
And what the music he had written is actually the end title of that movie.
Wow.
That is what he had done. And so director goes, that's cool. I want to meet that guy. And Alan goes to meet Bob Zemeckis, and
oh, yeah.
the rest is history, literally. I just actually just got a call for a project. It's for a new composer who wanted to hire a young mixer, and it's a big movie, big orchestra, and the studio was a little nervous about that. Not that the young mixer couldn't do the job, but studios are nervous. They want, because everybody's new. The director's new, the composer's new. They wanted it's like an insurance policy to them. It isn't that, oh, this person's so much better, but it's more about experience. It isn't just getting a sound, it's moving the session along. It's thinking quick if something happens. It's, that kind of stuff. Experience. Yeah, I mean, it's maybe the entire list of good things about being old is you have experience. So, if something happens, you don't freak out. If whatever module goes dead, or there's the Pro Tools crashes, things happen, stuff happens, and the experience just calms you, hopefully. Yes.
So do you not freak out? Do you never get projects
I
that you're
don't.
like, damn, I don't know how we're going to do that?
I don't freak out.
No? You're chill?
I don't.
That's awesome.
I am chill.
That's
I am
awesome.
chill. See, here's the deal. This is an important thing to realize. We, those of us that sit in front of these consoles, we're in this world, this electronic, complex, high-tech world. The money people, they don't know what any of this crap does. And it scares them because they know they need you. Because, yeah, right, you know how to work this crap, and they don't. And that scares them. They don't have control over it. If something happens and you freak out, they really go nuts. There are certainly tense times, but I've never, it hasn't ever been about the technology. It's been more about the politics. Politics are hard sometimes. And that's the real, and that's also sometimes the biggest challenge about the job. Yeah, but I've learned that, if I just shut up, I'm going to learn a lot. Just because I sit there at that console and I hear some incredible things. It's fun. I got it sometimes because people talking on their phone and whatever they're carrying on, and especially around music. Music's party. They think, oh, let's show up and we're going to party. And I've had a lot of times I've had to stand up and say, look, just shut up. I'm actually doing something here that's really important to you guys. And if something goes down and I can't hear it now and I find it in mix, you're going to be real unhappy. But it's good. People are great about it. They really are. But I mean, they show up with their kids and their friends, and because it's party. Music is party time. I say, well, we're just going to have to take a little break here because Pro Tools, we're going to have to reboot. Pro Tools. Listen, that's another thing I've seen. When we first started using Pro Tools, it was a real dicey thing, and they would crash a lot. We always had a backup machine of some sort running, especially for music. You've got it's music. Here's with orchestra, right? I've got 80, 90, 100 players out there, right? Their meters are running no matter what. So, if something, every minute is expensive. They cost that might be $30,000 a day. It's a lot of loot. Well, if a machine dies, that's a problem. Well, way back when we first started with Pro Tools, that happened. I mean, dying, like need another one kind of thing. So we always had a backup of some sort, another machine or Nowadays, it just doesn't happen. It's Pro Tools have really come a long way. They're very, very stable, and so we don't even think about that much anymore, which is kind of nice. But so what's the worst that happens? Oh, we have to reboot. It really isn't. Most of the consoles are modular. If anything's going to go out, it's a module. Power supplies don't it's just these things just don't have, and in the studio scenario, even if a power supply were to crash, they have a backup. I mean, these are the things that are like fatal, where the console dies kind of thing. It honestly, very, very rarely. I've been in a scenario, by the way, power goes out, where, literally, whatever happens, that's an act of God, they call it. That, we're done for the day. That's, that, but again, I've been, in the scoring world for 35 years. It's happened once. So even that doesn't happen. Very, very rarely is there ever a fatal kind of, end of the day kind of thing. So other than that, it's more a nuisance than anything. And there's just no reason to freak out. And again, if you do, it makes people nervous about you. So no matter what, just stay calm. The hardest thing about my job is scheduling. I'm freelance. I've always been freelance. It's the worst part of my job, because in my world, things move around, and I sell time. That's it. So if I don't sell today, it's gone forever. So the hardest thing is scheduling. But here's the rub. You have a client. You have somebody who's loyal to you. And they call you and say, we have a project in 3 weeks. We're going to score in 3 weeks. Are you available? Yes, I'm available. Okay, I want to put you on hold for 3 weeks of time. We're going to start in 3 weeks. Okay, that's really great. I'm feeling great, right? Tomorrow, I get a call. Are you available in 3 weeks? No, I'm not. I'm sorry. I've got, if you're gonna, is there any? Can you start sooner? No, I can't really start. We got to go right that. I'm sorry. In 2 weeks, your client, who's very loyal to you, calls you and said, "Oh God, we're gonna push back another 2 weeks," which means that you lost the job that you could have taken.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. Oh, yes.
What do you do?
You lost the job. That's what you do.
Or let's say it's the exact opposite. The new client calls you and books you for the 3 weeks, in the 3 weeks, and your client who you've had for years calls you the next day. What do you do? My approach is I have to honor the commitment. And you see, we're in a very, very small business, believe it or not. Everybody knows everybody. In my world, everybody knows everybody. If you blow off the new one, the commitment for your other client, everyone will know about that. It's a terrible thing to do.
And he'll never forgive you.
Yeah. And it's awful. So that's an important thing. If you make a commitment, keep it, no matter what. Even if you have to say no to this person who's been tremendously loyal to you. It's hard to do, especially in the freelance world. No is just a word you never want to hear it out of your mouth, ever. You never want to say no. But you have to do it. That's important. Honesty is real important. So yeah, be honest. Honesty is not always the best policy, but in business it really is. It really is. It's very hard for me. I've done it, but it's very hard to do more than one project at a time. It really is. But by the same token, it's really hard to say no. Like I said, but what you never want to do is jeopardize anything. As hard as it is, you're better off saying no than stepping on both projects. That's what you end up doing. And so, what you're doing is you're just pissing two people off. And that's not good. Like I said, you guys that are young guys and ladies, you're developing your reputations. Reputation is everything, and you want it to be as great as it can possibly be. What you don't ever want to do, like I said, is for anybody to, oh well, yeah, but they said yes, but he or she they're gonna blow me off for a bigger name, or I can't trust that they'll be there. They might not ever say it, but they'll think it. Yeah. They'll remember it, and that's something you don't ever want. So always think of your reputation, and always respect that more than anything, because like I said, it's a tiny business, and if you can make one mistake and it'll take you 10 years to make up for it. A bad one. I'm just saying, I don't mean to, it's not that a mistake is the wrong term. If you really do something, if you really screw it up.
If you don't deliver. Yeah.
10 years to make up for it. You have to communicate. So this September comes along and nobody calls you, and then you call. Say, I'm just checking in. I just want to see if it's not going to happen in September. I just want to make sure. I want to be available for you, but if you're not going to, if your project's pushing, I just need to know that so I can, if something comes my way, I can be available. Or if somebody calls you, you call the other client who has you on hold with the same conversation. Listen, I've been contacted, but I've committed to you. I just want to see, are you going to go or not? You have to make those calls. You have to be proactive. You can't necessarily wait for them to contact you. They'll appreciate that, by the way.
That's good advice.
It's a good way to deal with it. You're just being honest, just saying, look, everybody gets it. They know, and besides, they got you on hold. Music, why is music even in a movie? Well, because it talks to our emotions. It's something that we feel, and so when you leave a movie, yes, you remember the movie and things about it, but the music is inside of you. And the part of what makes that happen is melody. With all due respect to every sound designer who ever lived, sound design isn't going to do that. Sound design it's wonderful. It creates ambience in it, and it has power, but it doesn't necessarily relate to us emotionally. That's music's job. Because believe me, if it wasn't for that, the film industry would have sailed me long ago. I assure you, and everybody I work with. We would have no purpose. That's the reason music is there, and melody it's just such a key part of that. I mean, I did this score. Forrest Gump is a great example. You hear Jaws, great example. You hear 2 notes of Jaws, or you can hear 2 bars of the theme to Forrest Gump. You know that movie. You know it's the movie. You know where you were when you saw the movie. That's the power of music. Jaws, you hear 2 notes and you don't want to, you're afraid to go in the ocean. I mean, it's genius. But music's the only thing that can do that. A great sound effect, fantastic, won't do that.
but it's just in the story. The music is in
Right.
you.
Exactly. The great sound effects are, essential, and they're, fantastic. And I apologize. Don't mean to compare in any way, but I'm just saying the purpose of music. And it's troubling to me
Yeah.
to see a movie with a score that really is that, this is, and it's a lot of it's, this is such great score. I'm going riff. Anyway, that's really more of a message for me anyway. I hopefully melodic score will become, in again shortly. And I shouldn't say it. It's not that it's totally gone, but it's not. Many directors think melody is old-fashioned.